Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. This past weekend we had the Swiss stage for both the NA and EMEA regions for the Overwatch Champions Series. And we are now down to the 16 teams that will be remaining competing in each of those regions for the group stages. So, today we're going to talk about the EMEA region. We're going to go through their groups, their 4 groups of 4. I'm not going to go through each roster individually and break down kind of what I think the highlight for each of those teams is. I'm not going to go through and name every single player's history and stuff like that. I'm just going to give kind of the quick rundown of each of the 4 teams and the ones that I think look to be the best in the teams. Similar to kind of what I did with the World Cup. Instead of going down and breaking down each roster individually, we're just going to do it in a kind of general broad overview, talking about all the teams and giving you how I think they will compete and all that stuff. So, EMEA today, hopefully tomorrow, North America. It might be Wednesday, but we'll see how long it takes me to get this one out to you all, and how long it takes for the North America one to finish up. So, let's jump in, and let's start with EMEA Group A. So, this group is headlined by the team that finished at the top of the Swiss bracket. They were the only team to finish with an undefeated record, and that is Twisted Minds. The core of that roster, of course, the Saudi Arabian Overwatch World Cup team that just won the World Cup in the 2023 World Cup. So you have Lambda, Quartz, and Yubi as your damage dealers. You have KSA as your tank. Then you have a European backline. You have Kellen and Slay from Denmark, and you have Skyripa, who I believe is from Romania. This team should be the favorite to win EMEA in general. They should definitely be the favorite to win this group. The only game that I can think of that I know they played a really good team was the team that finished second, OWCS, and we'll talk about them in Group B. And they beat them, so only one team in both EMEA and North America went undefeated. I think that's on purpose. I think in theory you could have multiple teams go undefeated, but I think it's very difficult to do it. But maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe the system prevents that from happening. I don't fully know. But Twisted Minds definitely the best team in this group. They for sure should be the favorite to win Group A and probably the favorite to win the EMEA main event in general, because I think they just look to be the strongest team in EMEA right now. The second team in the group is Quick Esports. Some familiar names to some Overwatch League fans, and also some pretty staple names in contenders from the past few years. So they have a DPS line of Phi, Daned, Grathen, and Shax. Shax, former Overwatch League player. Daned and Grathen have been around for a long time in contenders. I think Daned never made it to the Overwatch League, but was one of those players who in Europe was one of the kind of top figures people kind of knew. Then you have Don and Twolz as your Dutch tank line. Don, of course, was in the Overwatch League. Main tank player. Very good. Very, very good player. I thought he was very good when he played on the Eternal before they went really, really bad. So, solid tank player there. Twolz is going to hopefully be there to cover the off-tank role, if Don's, main picks are not really available to him. And then you have Dala and Abik as your backline. So this is a pretty good team of pretty solid European players. Lots of guys who've been around for a while. I think they're one of those teams that has a definitely a chance to get out of this group and even potentially do a little bit of damage in the main event. I think it's a little bit tougher. I don't think they have the same highs as a team like Twisted Minds, obviously, or even like OWCS or Space Station Gaming. I think that they're going to be a middle of the pack team, but I think they're still pretty good. Really, the only team they're going to compete with in this group is Team Peps, who finished 9th in the Swiss bracket, so they finished next to each other. They didn't play. I did try to see if they played a match against each other. They did not. But this Team Peps roster, of course, you have Naga, Stelios, and Hybrid. Then you have Ben Best on the tank and Cronus FD God on the support. So, a few Overwatch League veterans, Naga, Hybrid, Benbest, FD God. Cronus was on the UK World Cup roster. Stelios player I'm not super familiar with, but it's a name I have heard. I'm just not super familiar with his play and the kind of success that Stelios has had. But I think this is really the only other team in this group competing for a potential advancement. I think Twisted Mind's going to be the favorite here. I think Quick and Peps are both going to destroy Bingus, who's the final team, and then it's going to come down to the winner of Quick and Peps. Like that's really it. I think you're going to have a 4-0 Twisted Minds, a 3-1 Quick or Peps, a 2-2, and probably an 0, or it's 3 games. So 3-0, a 2-1, a 1-2, and an 0-3. Speaking of Bingus, their roster is Lutule and Sturbergern as their damage, Jack as their tank, Helmer Drake and Waynon as their support. So this is one of those teams that seems like a team that just, as far as I'm aware, this is one of those just like guys on the ladder who were able to get a team together and make it to the top 16. I don't think they're going to be a particularly high-level team. I don't think there's any real reason to expect this team to do a lot of damage. I'm always going to have my eyes out on these teams for any kind of interesting players that seem to kind of have good pop-off moments. I think that's what my eyes are on. Maybe, Jack is like a secret god on the tank roll, and a team that feels like they're struggling in the tank roll looks at him and goes, you know what? He actually might be an improvement over what we have now. We have a better core, but we're missing a tank. Maybe that's the kind of thing we do. That's my eyes there, but I don't think Bingus really is one of the teams expected to be doing a lot of really major things in this tournament. So I think it comes down to Quick and Peps between who gets it. I want to say Peps is my pick to get out. I think that it's a team where, I know the talent a little bit more, their staff is a little bit more familiar to me, but I will say I think it's very, very close. I think where Quick's potential benefit is the tank role. I thought Ben Best was okay last year for Washington Justice. I don't think he was great, but I think that you have a little bit more flexibility in that tank role and Quick. They have technically more flexibility on damage because they have so many damage dealers. So I think the current meta is not a great Ben Best meta. It's a lot of Wrecking Ball in some regions. I think in NA, I'm pretty sure it's been a lot of like Sigma and Doomfist. Actually, it's been a lot of Doomfist. And I just don't think that's Ben Best's specialty. I don't think it's his best role. It's his best hero. So I think it'll be close between those two. But I think for right now, I will say Quick is the team to get out in this group alongside Twisted Mind, so I think we'll absolutely get out of this group. Moving on to Group B, we open up with Spraycheck, the team that got second in the Swiss. This is a team with a bunch of names I'm sure most people will recognize. They have a damage trio of Kai, Kevster, and Sauna. They have tanks LH Cloudy and Vistola, and supports Ghost 91 and Masa. So largely a Finnish team. Team Finland did very well in the World Cup. They finished third overall in the World Cup. So, very good team. Not all of these players competed in that. Ghost 91 was not on that roster. LH Cloudy was, and then got removed. And then obviously Kai and Kevster, not from Finland, were not on that roster. But this is a very good team. I really like this team. I think they are definitively the second best team in EMEA. Or at least in the conversation with the second best team in the EMEA. We'll talk about some of the other ones that are very, very good. But they did play against and beat Space Station Gaming, which is that largely kind of London Spitfire core from the past couple of years. That team did play Spraycheck, and Spraycheck did win. I watched that game. I thought Spraycheck looked really, really good in that game. I thought the final map of that series was Shambali Monastery, and Spraycheck just kind of dominated them on that one. So I think you're seeing just this team has a lot of really good players. They're very talented. I think Vestola looked so good in the World Cup. Masa still looks very good. Kai and Kevster, I think, are just a duo that work well together as well. I don't think Sauna played much in that series, if at all. So it's a very good team. I think they are one of my favorites to get out as well. I think they're a really strong team. I think they're a really strong core. And I'd be kind of shocked if they didn't make it out, because I really like what they have. I think they're a very solid team, very solid core, and I think they are definitively one of the favorites to get out. Definitely to win this group, but I think also just in general to get out of the EMEA main events and stuff to go to the LANs. I think they're one of the teams that people are going to look at as a favorite to get out. Next team is Sheer Cold. They have damage line of Condi, Exodial, and Will. They have tanks NKZ and Skytor, and they have supports Ilpi13, Strebber, and Yoham. I do not know many of the names on this team. Skytor, I recognize he was on Team Belgium for the World Cup. Outside of him, I think I know NKZ as well. Back from when I was doing my video of making hypothetical World Cup rosters, and I basically just had to go through Team Netherlands, or go through Dutch players that were active. He was one of the names I remember finding. Outside of that, I'm really not that familiar with the players on this roster. Sheer Cold is a very well-established organization. They've been around for a while. They've had a lot of really great European players that they've produced that have shown up in the Overwatch League. But this version of the roster, they have some players who've been around since last year. Condi, Ilpi, NKZ, Strebber, Yoham, they all joined in July of last year. Skytor in November. And then Exodial and Will were earlier this year. So they've made some changes, obviously. They've had some things that have kind of changed their roster. But I don't really think they've done much in tournaments since this roster's been together. So I don't really think they're in a position where I expect them to be a really, 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 really like high-level team. I think this group is honestly kind of mid. Outside of Alspray who I think are just very, very good. The rest of the teams I'm kind of on. I don't think many of them are like amazing. So it'll be interesting to see what the situation is there. New Age, the next team here, I actually think they might be the second best team in this group. They have Dip and Sharp as their damage line, they have Doge as their tank, and they have Buddy and Natsuki as their backline. This is a team that has names I'm familiar with. Doge was in the Overwatch League. Sharp was in the Overwatch League. Kind of didn't really get much play time, but was in the Overwatch League. And I think they're a team that, to me, look a little bit more kind of established. I think it's always tough when you have a bunch of players that you're not super familiar with, and that's one of the reasons why I think OWCS is very interesting, because Europe is a scene that produced some very good high-end talent, but a lot of Europe for the past several years has been kind of ignored in a lot of ways, and I think that this is a good year to kind of see where things are, and that was true as well with the World Cup. We started to see some World Cup teams do better than expected, and some talent from Europe that made people go, oh, this is actually like a pretty good, there's some pretty good teams, coming out of Europe. Some good players coming out of Europe. And so I think we're going to see some hopefully some interesting stuff going on here. But New Age and Sheer Cold, to me, I expect to be the ones competing for that second spot. No offense to Keltis, the fourth roster here with Kai and Zedra, Kai 41 and Zedra, I should say, as their damage. Depsy is their tank, and Padanova and GCB as their supports. It's another one of those teams where I just don't think that Padanova was in the World Cup, so that's a name I recognize, but the other four I do not recognize. And so to me, it's one of those things where it's another team where it's just like some good players who are good at Overwatch and are good in ranked and good on the ladder, but how good are they in the game, when it comes to playing like real high stakes matches? These are not players that have that kind of history or that experience. They don't have that pedigree to them, which I think makes it more difficult. So I think this is one of those, similar to Group A. I think it's really just Alice Braychek is going to win. Sheer Cold and New Age are going to fight for that second spot out, and that's really the only way I see this one going. Just seems like that's kind of a general trend for much of the groups in this World Cup. not in the World Cup, OWCS. Next, Group C. I really like Group C. I think this might be a very tough group. You open up with Rock Esports, a Saudi Arabian organization. They have Rojo and Checkmate as their damage duo. They have TVNT as their tank, and they have AOI and Izayaki as their support. So they got third in the Swiss bracket. This team is very good. They are one of the top teams that played in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is still a very good scene, and they bring in Checkmate and Izayaki, who also played for them in stuff like Saudi E-Leagues. So this is a pretty solid team. I'm not super familiar with them. Rojo, I believe, is a really good DPS player from everything I've heard about him. Like a phenomenal player. Hit scan player to pair with Checkmate. So that'll be interesting to see. He's done quite well when you look kind of what he's done. Got second as a member of GK Esports in the Saudi E-League 2023 Season 2. So good team that you're looking at here. It's going to be interesting to kind of see what they do. But bringing in 2 Korean players as well is always an interesting thing to see. And I'm curious to see how well this team does, because I really do think that they are one of the teams that could make it the distance and could go all the way. I don't think they will. I think that of the group winners, they're not. I don't think they're the weakest group winner, but I think of the. I wouldn't put them in the number 3 overall spot when it comes to teams here. But I want to see them play more, and then we'll kind of have a better idea of where they are. But they're a very good team. Look, you have an Overwatch League champion from 2023 and an Overwatch League champion from 2021 on this roster with Checkmate and Izayaki. You have a solid Saudi Arabian core of players that know how to play with each other. They've played for a while, or at least they've been together before OWCS, so they have a little bit more synergy going for them. That helps them quite a bit. Next team on this group is Ex Oblivione. Shout out Matilda Smedius. But they have a damage trio of Shockwave, Cloud, and Cookie84. They have tank Chase Torch, and they have supports Crispy and Canale. Shout out to Canale. Did well in the World Cup for Team Spain. This is a good team. This is a team that has some really good players. Shockwave is the player who, of course, has been kind of up and down in his career with the Overwatch League and contenders. Was very good on Vancouver. His first stint in the league, then went to Philly and didn't really get a lot of playtime because of visa issues. Then went back to Vancouver, got dropped. Went back to contenders, came up to New York, had some moments. And I think Shockwave's a player that we've seen how good Shockwave can be. So hopefully this is a roster that does well for him. Cloud was a member of that Saudi Arabian team Finnish team that did very well in the World Cup. So that's a name that you know is good pedigree, and you're going to have a lot of kind of hopefully help for Shockwave there. I'm not super familiar with Cookie84, but I expect Shockwave Cloud are the main two, and Cloud is a really good player, so I think that'll help a lot. I'm not familiar with Chase Torch or Crispy, the other two players in this roster I don't really have any history with, but I think it's going to be interesting. You know, I think a lot of Europe is going to be very similar in that way, where I think it's going to be a lot of teams that do quite well with some maybe relative unknowns. There's a lot of talent that is going to be interesting to kind of watch out for in this region. And so this is one of those teams that I'm excited to see them. I think they're good. I think that they certainly are one of the teams I would pick to get out of this group, but I don't think they are world beaters. But I do think that Rock is a beatable team. I think Rock is definitely invincible. I think there's a chance that Rock is not the team that wins this group. I think they will, but I think there's certainly a chance that they're not the top team. They're, in my opinion, the second best or second weakest top seed of all the teams, which makes sense. They're the 3 seed. Next team is Left Right Goodnight. This team is, as far as I'm aware, pretty much all players who are currently actually playing in NA Collegiate. This team is, I believe, just Illinois State University. The entire Illinois State University roster basically is just this left-right Goodnight team. I don't know why they went in as this and not as Redbirds. I guess there's some players who are different. But like Lethal, Admiral, Ariel, Cuffa, Sile, Maimone, they're all competing with Redbird. I think my guess is they couldn't actually do everybody because they have some NA players on the team. And I don't think you can have that many NA players, so that's where you get, like, Gala comes in, who's not on the main roster. Because their supports otherwise would have had a bit more of an issue, so they had to do things, and obviously they have a couple of imports. They have one import with Cuffa. But I like this team, and they're pretty solid, they're pretty good. I think they're going to be interesting to watch. It's cool to see them competing in EMEA after being in NA Contenders or NA Collegiate for a while, but I think they're a pretty good team. I know there's some stuff with Cuffa that he wanted to compete in North America. There was a whole slew of problems that came with that, and so now they're here in EMEA instead. But it's an interesting team. I think they're pretty good. Obviously, Admiral, very good main support player, played on London Spitfire the past couple of years. Lethal was on London Spitfire, didn't really get any playtime, he got dropped. Maimone was on that UK roster. Sile, bit of a disappointing run for Team Sweden in the World Cup, but he was on that roster as well. So players who've been around, this is definitely a team that also has synergy, it has been around for a while, so I would not be shocked if this team was able to actually get in over a team like EXO. I think they have talent. I think they have synergy. That's where their strength is. I think they're probably not the most high-end roster. I don't think they have the flashiest of players, but they're a strong roster that has played together, and so I think that helps them quite a bit in trying to get to be one of those top teams. Final team is AOMA Esports. They have Skitza and Avo as their damage. They have Theomatic on tank, and Ali and Anj, or ANJ, as their supports. Lots of World Cup players here. I believe Theo, Ali, and ANJ were all World Cup for their respective countries. So Ali, very good run from him. ANJ on Team Netherlands. Theomatic, I want to say, was on Team Spain, despite his flag showing South Africa. So this is a team that, once again, I don't think will do amazing. I think the bottom teams in these groups, they might be the best, like one of the better bottom teams. I think this group's pretty competitive. I think this is actually one of the better groups. I think it'll be Rock and probably EXO that get out. But I could honestly see Left Right Goodnight getting out. And if AOMA beat a team like EXO or Left Right Goodnight, and that was the reason why that team didn't advance, I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think AOMA was going to move on, but I think they certainly, I would not be super shocked if they had were able to cause an upset of some kind. But I don't think it will be that way. I think it'll be Rock and probably EXO, but it's an interesting group, and I think it's really fun to see kind of how some of these groups are getting more competitive, and it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. But the final group, possibly the most competitive group, or the least competitive group, we go to Group D. We open up with Raspberry Racers. Their team, Alexi, Surge, and Yoko as their damage line. Ice as their tank, and Gustav and Level 1 Crook as their supports, their backline. It's a decent roster. They've got some good names. Raspberry Racers is a staple in European contenders. They've been around for a long time, so they're kind of one of those well-established staple European rosters and organizations. So glad to see them competing. Glad to see them with a spot here in the group stage. They've got some names on this team. Alexei, I believe, played for Russia's World Cup team several years ago. Obviously, they didn't compete in 2023, but in years past, I believe he was on the team. So that's someone to keep an eye on. But a lot of this team, not a lot of players I'm super familiar with. The team I am the most familiar with in this group, and the team that I think will ultimately be the number one seed out of this group, is Space Station Gaming. Sparker, Backbone, Psycho, the DPS line, all Overwatch League veterans. Hottie, and then Funny Astro Landon. So this is a team of all Overwatch League veterans. This is basically the core that 3-0'd the Atlanta Reign, the Korean super team, in the playoffs last year. with the addition of Psycho in the DPS role and and Funny Astro instead of Admiral. To me, this seems very good. They did lose to Alspraycheck, but I think they're, still a really, really good team. I think they're still one of the best teams in Europe. The game between Alspraycheck and Space Station Gaming, most impressive performance, Blizzard World, Psycho. He was unbelievable. His Echo was popping off. He dominated. So I think this is a really good team. I think they're the best team in this group. I'm sorry, Raspberry Racers. I think you're a solid roster. You got some great players. This, to me, is the best team in this group. I think they are definitively better than 5th. I think they are a top 3 team in the EMEA region. I think they're better than Rock. Obviously, I'd love to see them play, and so we can get the full answer for that. But this is a very good team. I think they should be looked at as one of the favorites to move on out of group stage as a group winner. Next team you have is Diempero. They have China and Juzu as their damage dealers, Nexo and Blackpink as their tanks, and EGS and S-Chef as their supports. I don't know who any of these people are. I will be honest with you. I'm not familiar with any of these players. I don't know who any of them, what their histories are. They're probably a ranked ladder roster. They performed well, which is awesome to see. Very happy for them. It looks like a largely Polish roster, which is pretty cool. But I don't really know much of what to say about this team other than that. I think they'll do okay, but we'll have to wait and see when things actually kick off in the group stage. And then the final team is another staple in EMEA and EU contenders. They have Kaya, Kaiser, and Ken and Necros as their damage line. They have Chasm and Isaac as their tank, and Abs and Hampa as their supports. So a couple of Overwatch World Cup names. Ken I recognize. Isaac I recognize. Hampa was on that Team Sweden. Hampa kind of got the short end of the stick from a lot of the fans and a lot of the community. A lot of people looked at Hampa as one of the problems for that Sweden roster, which is a little unfair, but that's the world we live in. Abs, another player with the World Cup experience, played on Team India. So I think it's a pretty good team. I think that realistically, to me, this is one of those few groups where I just think like Space Station Gaming is so good as a second seed in this group. I think they're even better than the top seed, that it's hard to look at this group and think anybody other than the top 2 get out. A lot of the other groups, Group C, I was like, the top team is much better, and the other 2 are pretty good. Group B and Group A were the same thing. This, to me, is not that way. To me, this is the 4 and the 5 seeds overall. Raspberry Racers, Space Station Gaming are just better than the other 2 teams here. I don't even think, realistically, that Diempero is better than just the way that the Swiss bracket works. You end up in a position like this. So I favor Space Station to get out of this group on top, and Raspberry Racers to get out second. Don't know for sure yet. We haven't seen it yet, but that's where right now I sit on here. So those are the groups. Those are my initial thoughts on all the groups. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on any of the groups. If there's any players I talked about today or didn't talk about today that you want to talk about more, provide any information for, I'd love to hear from you, obviously. We'll get a chance to watch them all later this week when the actual group stage matches kick off. We actually get to see them live and in action. But for now, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But that's going to be all for me for today. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing. Your support does help out a lot with the channel. NA video coming soon, so don't worry. That'll be the next one. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But that's all. Thank you all once again for watching. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.